Russia has made a bold move. It officially recognized the Taliban government in Afghanistan. Is the start of global domino effect. Could China, Iran, or even India be next? And what does this mean for India's regional security? Let's unpack the bigger picture with Lieutenant Colonel J S Sodhi. Namaskar and welcome to another compelling episode of Global Focus. I am your host, Hari Sinha. Today we are diving into a major geopolitical development that could shift the balance of power in South Asia and beyond. Russia's official recognition of Taliban regime in Afghanistan. While most Western nations still refuse to acknowledge the Taliban diplomatically, Moscow has taken a bold and controversial step. Is this part of a strategic move to build an alternate world order? What are the implications for India, regional security, and global security? To break this down for us, we are joined by a trusted voice on foreign policy and national security, Lieutenant Colonel J S Sodhi. Welcome to Global Focus, Colonel J S Sodhi. Your expertise in reading between the lines of international diplomacy is always invaluable, especially when the world is dealing with such a complex shift. It's an honor to have you with us, sir.
Jai Hind, Hari Prakash ji.
Jai
It is
Hind.
my honor and privilege to be part of your esteemed channel.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. So we are moving to our first question. Why Russia is officially recognizing the Taliban now? And what message does it send to the world? What do you say?
Well, the location of Afghanistan has been very important, not from the present times, but historically. If we go little back in history, when the great game was played between the Russian and the British empires that lasted for 100 years from 1807 to 1907, that time Afghanistan was at the center stage of the great game between the two big empires. The importance of Afghanistan hasn't diminished over the time, rather, it has increased. Because Afghanistan is at the confluence of Central Asia, where every major power wants a foothold so that they can expand either economically or militarily when the need arises. It is in this backdrop that on 15th August 2021, when Taliban 2.0 returned back to power, there was no country in the world ready to recognize the Taliban
Yes.
government in Afghanistan. But as we have seen in the last about 4 years, the change has started happening with Russia, with China, with Pakistan recognizing the Taliban government gaining more legitimacy in the world affairs, because the world by far has now realized that it is the Taliban government which will remain in Afghanistan for a long, long time until and unless some other faction manages to take power, which seems impossible as of now because we have seen what happened during the 20 years that America was in control of the multi-coalition forces in Afghanistan, how
Yeah.
the Taliban came back to power. So I don't foresee any other faction in Afghanistan seizing power other than Taliban remaining for a long, long time. And also, Afghanistan has got a very rich base in minerals, in rare earth
Yeah.
minerals.
Yeah.
Today, the importance of rare earth minerals is phenomenal because rare earth minerals, apart from the many usages, it has a lot of defense use,
Yeah.
especially in the missiles, especially in various weapon systems. So it is here that the importance of Afghanistan once again comes to the fore. Apart from the location, it is now the rare earth minerals which it has, and hence there is a change in the stance from various global powers towards Afghanistan.
Right, sir. Right, sir. So is this a part of Russia's broader strategy to counter Western influence in South Asia?
Well, definitely, Russia wants to have a total grip on Afghanistan because it would not like Afghanistan to go to the Western grip. And we have seen that how the Russians, the Chinese, now the Pakistanis have been playing a very different kind of a game where they are attracting the Taliban government towards themselves. Despite about 3.5 years of lot of tensions and turbulence between Pakistan and Afghanistan, we saw in June a trilateral meet was held in China, in which apart from China, Afghanistan and Pakistan officials attended. And soon after that, Pakistan announced the recognition of the Taliban government and the establishment of the diplomatic ties between Pakistan and Afghanistan. So, in a nutshell, Russia and China do not want Afghanistan to be in the Western grip. Now, as far as America is concerned, they want a foothold in Afghanistan. And as there were reports that the Americans are planning to take over the Bagram air base in Afghanistan, which the finally the Taliban government did not agree. But yes, between the three superpowers, that is Russia, China, and America, each one is trying for a foothold in Afghanistan. So far, the Russians and the Chinese have been pretty successful. In fact, just last to last year, China gave $100 million loan to Afghanistan. We have seen the closeness between Russia and Afghanistan. So, I mean, out of the three superpowers, two are definitely in great control in Afghanistan. And also, I would like to say, you see, in real life, also, when somebody is isolated and some other person tries to get close to that isolated person, so the isolated person does tend to gravitate towards the person who is giving him sympathy, whereas the balance of the humanity or humankind is isolating him. Same is the case with Afghanistan. After the Taliban 2.0 came back to power in August 2021, they were totally isolated. But then, like I said earlier, when the Russians and the Chinese started making moves forward towards Taliban, they were more than glad and they gravitated easily towards Russians and the Chinese.
So how will this affect the Taliban's global legitimacy?
Well, the Taliban isn't much concerned about the global legitimacy for the simple reason that firstly, they're a very, community which has a lot of self-pride. As we all know, Afghanistan is famously or infamously called as the graveyard of empires. Whichever empire has tried to take over Afghanistan has not only failed, they have failed miserably. I would request your viewers that whenever they have time, they should read a book, which is The Great Game by Henry Klopka, which explains beautifully how Afghanistan, despite being repeatedly tried to be taken over by the Russians or by the Britishers, they
Hmm.
always remained independent. So historically, the Afghanis are a community which has a lot of self-pride. They do not get subjugated by anyone. So as far as the present Taliban government too is concerned, firstly, they aren't too much, pretty much, concerned about the global legitimacy. They would prefer to be in poverty than to be accepted by someone by putting a lot of strings, which they will never. And they haven't so far historically in many centuries either.
Yes.
Now, ever since the Russians and the Chinese have gone close to Afghanistan and the Taliban 2.0 government, their appetite or hunger for global legitimacy has further reduced because now, out of the three superpowers, two superpowers are very close to them. So they really, do not worry much about the global legitimacy, as not only the two superpowers, most of the Islamic world, which comprises 57 nations, which have a large majority of population as Muslims. So the Muslim world, the Islamic world is totally with Afghanistan. Both the superpowers are with Afghanistan. So they're pretty much comfortable as on date.
How could Russia's Taliban recognition affect India's security and strategic interest in the region?
Well, on 21st December 2011, when the then American President Barack Obama announced the East Asia strategy, which is also called as Pivot to Asia,
Mm.
in which bulk of the American troops stationed in the Middle East were moved to the Indo-Pacific to counter the growing aggressiveness of China, there was a void created in the Middle East. Now we know out of the 21 nations in the Middle East, 13 are Arab nations or Muslim majority nations. So this void which was created in the Middle East,
Mhm.
China and Russia started taking advantage and started filling the void created by the Americans. Now, at the same time, as the Americans were moving towards Indo-Pacific, the relations between India and USA started getting closer.
Yeah.
In the last about 14 years or so, ever since this pivot to Asia policy was announced,
Mhm.
India and America have signed four major defense cooperation agreements, which are called as ISET, COMCASA, LEMUA. Now, as the Indian and the American relationship started getting closer,
Mhm.
the Russian Pakistan, the Russian Afghani relations started getting closer.
I see.
Now, what Russia is doing, Russia is getting closer to Pakistan, Russia is getting closer to Afghanistan in a bid to check the growing closeness between India and America.
I see.
So the balance is now tilting of the Russian support to India from supporting India wholeheartedly, which we saw even especially during the 71 war, which is pretty famous.
Mhm.
Today, the Russians have a lot of sympathy for the Pakistanis as well as for the Afghanis. So, if I were to summarize where India stands today in
Mhm.
terms of the Russian relationship with Afghanistan or with Pakistan,
Yeah.
we are not on the same wicket with the Russians or the Soviets at that time during the 1971 war or during the 1970 or the 80 decades. A change has come in. And this change was glaringly visible during the initial phase of Operation Sindoor that lasted from 7th May to 10th May this year, in which the Russians did not openly support India. So definitely there is a change in the Russian heart towards India. Another reason is after Russia invaded Ukraine on 24th February 22, it's been over 3 years since the war is going on. So the Russians now are in total Chinese grip. So, and we are aware there's a lot of tensions between India and China.
Yeah.
So if we were to expect the same Russian friendship of the 70s and the 80s, I think that would not be a correct assessment because the pointers do not point towards this. In fact, I would like to tell some very interesting
Mm.
anecdote to the viewers. In the run up to the 71 war, Prime Minister Indira Gandhi wrote letters to 61 heads of state the world over seeking aid and assistance. Out of 61 countries to whom she wrote letters for support,
Mhm.
only three countries responded in affirmative. One was USSR, Soviet Union, now Russia.
Yeah.
Other was Israel, and third was Yugoslavia.
Other one,
So
second.
Yugoslavia got broken up into seven nations in 1992, and
Oh,
Soviet Union became
but
Russia.
second one, sir.
Israel,
Okay.
USSR, Israel, and Yugoslavia.
I see.
And in August 1971, on 5th August 1971, the Russian ambassador to Pakistan conveyed a confidential message
Mm.
to President Yahya Khan of Pakistan
Mm.
that in case Pakistan doesn't resolve
Mm.
inner turbulence in East Pakistan,
Mm.
it will not be able to match up to the Indian military might and it will be suicidal for Pakistan. So that was the great level of support which Soviet Union or USSR had for India in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
But like I explained, The more close India has become with America, the farthing of relations
Mm.
has increased between India and Russia.
Yes.
So, uh, like I said, to expect the same level of friendship with Russia as
Mm.
what expected in the 70s, 80s is not possible in the present times. So, yes, it has strategic implications for us because, out of the three superpowers today, Russia is not totally with us, which I just explained. China, we are pretty well aware they are totally anti us.
Mm.
America, we can't trust because each day the American president says some statement which is not deemed to be in favor of India.
Yeah.
So as on date, we are in a little difficult position because out of the three superpowers,
Mm.
not one is fully with us.
So should India now open a direct channel with Taliban?
Well, we have already started, in various steps, forums like uh, we have a liaison office in Kabul. We
Mm.
have given a lot of aid and assistance to Afghanistan, be it terms of wheat, be it terms of other eatables. So we have, in fact, our foreign minister also spoke to the Afghani foreign minister last month. But then our pace of, interacting with Taliban
Mm.
has been overshadowed by the speed with which China has got Afghanistan and Pakistan together.
Mm.
So it is here that we need a little reassessment that we have to be little more proactive with our neighbors, especially. You know, out of the eight neighbors that India has,
Mm.
if we take away China and Pakistan, which are our enemies, balance are six. Out of
Mm.
the balance six, only tiny Bhutan is with us.
Yeah.
The other five nations are in the Chinese grip. Though Afghanistan is not directly our neighbor because we don't share any common land border with Afghanistan, but yes, it is. It can be called as a distant neighbor.
Mm.
But even with Afghanistan, our interaction has not been which it should have been because we also have to understand that Pakistan is a permanent enemy. Nothing can change between India and Pakistan because the foundation of Pakistan is anti-India. So Pakistan can
Yeah.
never change.
Yeah.
So even when the Taliban 2.0 government came into power in August 21, I think looking back in hindsight, we should have welcomed the Taliban government and interacted with them much more rather than what we are doing much later.
Mm.
And by now, like I said, the game has been played by China and Pakistan. So yes, I totally agree with you. We should now step up our interaction more with Afghanistan
Mm.
because good relations with Afghanistan will make Pakistan upset. Because Pakistan's always fear has been the strategic depth. And here I would take just 2 more minutes, please. Till 1979, Afghanistan and India had very good relations. In fact, till 79, Afghanistan was one of the very modern nations in the world where there were no restrictions on anything.
Yeah.
So Pakistan was always terrified of the closeness between India and Afghanistan because it worried about the strategic depth. Having been split into two nations in 1971, Pakistan's biggest fear was the close relations between India and Afghanistan. And that is why Pakistan started giving support to the Islamic fundamentalists in Afghanistan,
Yeah.
which eventually led to the seizing of power in Afghanistan by the Islamic fundamentalists. Eventually, then the Russians invaded Afghanistan. And ever since 1979,
Mm.
Afghanistan has not seen peace. It has always been troubled. So Pakistan was successful in upsetting the cart in Afghanistan, which till 79 was a very peaceful country, very close relations with India. So I think we need to step up our interaction with Afghanistan because, like I said initially, come what may, the Taliban are going to remain in power in Afghanistan. So it is in our own interest we
Mhm.
have close ties with the Taliban government.
Yes. So what will be the trigger point for wider international recognition of Taliban?
Well, as like explained earlier, as far as Taliban 2.0 government is concerned, they aren't much, perturbed about international recognition, international legitimacy, because, like I said, they have the full backing of two superpowers, Russia and China. They have the full backing of the 57 nation Islamic world.
Mm.
So, as far as they as a nation are concerned, they are pretty much comfortable. Now, China will not let Afghanistan go out of its grip. So will not let Russia. So, whatever aid and assistance Afghanistan needs,
Mm.
these two superpowers are pretty much economically and militarily capable of giving whatever support Afghanistan so desires. The Afghanis, as it is, don't trust the West and
Mm.
definitely not the Americans. So, even if the Americans try to get close to Afghanistan, Afghanistan will never move away from Russia and China. And eventually, we will see more and more countries will start recognizing Taliban as the countries start realizing
Mm.
that the Taliban isn't going anywhere. They'll have no option but to recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan for various reasons like the geostrategic location, the trade, and the rare earth minerals, which are now coming in a big way. In fact, last year, China is supposed to have invested $1 billion for extracting rare earth minerals in Afghanistan. So every country would like to, have some part of the pie. So I think as time passes, more and more international recognition and legitimacy will be given to the Taliban government in Afghanistan.
So is this a shift in global power? Are Russia and China creating an alternate diplomatic world order?
Yes, of course they are. If we see the way the BRICS, the SEO has been functioning, the BRICS and SEO are primarily Russia and China driven. They are posing a great formidable, uh, you know, what do you call, hurdle to America, to G7. So, as far as the Russians and Chinese are concerned, they are slowly but surely making an alternate world order. Today, about 120 countries constitute the global south. Global south is where 80% of the world's population stays, and about 60% of the world's economy is there. The global south is totally in the Chinese grip. The global south trusts the Chinese more than it trusts the Americans. Africa, which has got 54 countries,
Mhm.
is totally in the Chinese and the Russian grip. So the Russians and the Chinese are slowly creating an alternate global world order. And more and more countries are joining their camp. Let me give two examples. The Middle East. The Arab nations have realized that where the Americans and the West have divided them, the Chinese have united them. And the biggest example is last year, China called a meeting of the 50 Palestinian organizations and made them sign a friendship pact. This thing the Americans have never done. The Americans have always divided the Arab world for their own vested interest. Another example is Africa. There was a time when the Americans and the French ruled almost over the entire Africa. Today, almost the entire Africa has gravitated towards China and Russia, with China being the biggest investor in Africa. So, yes, definitely a alternate world order is being created by Russia and China, and they're moving very slowly but very surely, and they are offering exactly opposite what the Americans did. They are showing dreams of prosperity, they are throwing in money because money is not a problem with China, and they're capitalizing on the misdeeds of the Americans, what they have done in the past. So, yes, definitely a new global world order is being created by the Russians and the Chinese.
So how should India shape its foreign policy for a multipolar world? What are your recommendations?
Well, India has done pretty well on the foreign policy front since 1947. We have been non-aligned, we have been neutral, we have always taken interest, we have always taken decisions which suited our national interest and national security. We have never succumbed to any pressures. And this, you know, falling of this foreign policy since 1947 till date has stood India in a good state. However, what needs also to be done is we need to have more close friendship with our six neighboring countries, except China and Pakistan, because they can never become our friends.
Mm.
And today it may sound little harsh,
Mhm.
but the reality is in today's world, money speaks.
Mm.
We need to increase our investments
Mhm.
in our six neighbors. The common, point which the neighboring nations say is that whereas China and India announce various initiatives for us,
Mhm.
China completes them well before time and the Indian projects get overdelayed. So, whatever we announce, we should
Mm.
ensure they're completed well before time. And that is where the power of money comes in. And that is where we need to be more, our uh, people who are on the ground at various levels need to be accountable, need to be responsible. If there is a project of the government of India in any neighboring country, it should be finished well before the deadline. This is what the Chinese do. And this is where we suffer, we lack. As a result,
Mhm.
the Chinese intrusion into the neighboring countries has increased manifold. So while our foreign policy is very good, it is time tested.
Mhm.
On the investment part, we need to, introspect and ensure that we complete the projects well before time.
But China traps them in debt actually to the BRI projects and all that. So doesn't it go against China?
Well, ideally it should, but it is not going. If we see out of 195 countries that exist in the world, out of which 193 are members of the United Nations,
Yeah.
China has signed BRI with 156 countries, and they're happy about it. And most of the BRI projects are moving as per the schedule. So, like I said, the world, the countries today need money. And anyone who's offering them money,
Yeah.
they're gravitating towards that side. Earlier, before China became the world's second biggest economy in 2007 and the world's third biggest in 2007 and second biggest in 2010, before
Mhm.
2007, the top economies were either American or Western. So wherever the Americans or Western economies would invest money, the countries would be with them. But things
Mhm.
changed after 2007. And now China is playing the same game with the West played for many decades. Now China is investing money. And like I said, they're completing the projects well before schedule. So though this debt type diplomacy is a term which is used often,
Mhm.
but on ground the realities are different where most countries today are finding comfortable to deal with China. Because till date, we also have to understand one thing. Till date, China hasn't shown any designs of expansion of expanding in the countries where it is helping. Whereas America, after it became independent in 1776, has fought 201 wars in the world, directly or indirectly. And China has not fought any war after the 1979 Vietnam War. So, what is happening is the perception of most of the global nations is shifting in favor of China, which, in my view, is a dangerous thing because China has long term plans. They are not short sighted like the Americans,
Mhm.
they're long sighted. So most countries who are now in the economic grip of China will definitely have trouble ahead. But then these countries are more worried about today. They're
Hmm.
not worried what will happen about after 100 or 200 years. So this is where the West and America needs to step in, because after all, what is important in the world is democracy, a rules-based world order. There was a time when countries trusted America. Today, it is not the case anymore. So a change has to come within, from America, from the West, in the way they've been dealing with the world.
So that's all for today's episode. As Russia opens door for Taliban, the world watches and waits. Will other powers follow? And how should India safeguard its national interest in this changing landscape? A big thank you to Lieutenant Colonel J S Sodhi for shedding light on this critical issue, and all of you for tuning in. If you found this episode insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Global Focus, where Indian minds decode global headlines. Until next time, stay informed, stay aware. Jai Hind. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. It was an honor and privilege to give my views.